The giants, enslaved since the very beginning, at the mercy of their masters, but mercy was not something that was regularly given to them. They are seen as brutish, simple, but Hawkeye Go and the giant blacksmith are a testament to those who perceive them as such. They are capable of speech, masters of their craft, strong leaders, fierce warriors, and wise creatures. They have been subjugated to a great many torments since they first emerged out of the dark. They are a forgotten pillar that upholds legends, legends that came to be remembered for eons. Helm of Hawkeye Go, one of Gwyn's 4 knights, received as a decoration of knightly honour, a helm crafted especially for the Honourable Hawkeye Go, only the eye holes were packed in with tree resin by those who dismissed Go as a brutish giant. Armour of Hawkeye Go, one of Gwyn's 4 knights, armour donned by Go since the days as a dragon slayer. The medallion bequeathed by the Lord himself and the dragonbone pauldrons are symbols of the highest honours. Gauntlets of Hawkeye Go, received as a decoration of honour, crafted of a similar material to the gauntlets worn by the Silver Knights. Now unfortunately the Silver Knights gauntlets don't describe what they are actually made of, but I believe it to be marcite. The shield of the giant sentinel reads, "Great shield made of bronze and marcite, used by the giant sentinels of Anolondo. Marcite, or white iron, is effective against non-physical damage, but as the shield is designed for giant sentinels, its weight is immeasurable." So marcite, this white iron, is ancient, just like the brass made to make the giant sentinel set. The giant sentinel set reads, "Armour of the giant sentinels of Anolondo, made from ancient brass. It also offers protection versus non-physical attacks, but due to its giant size, it is extremely heavy for humans and impedes stamina recovery." Now, metals definitely do represent the timeline of Lordran, or at least the timeline of Dark Souls and Dark Souls 1. That is a whole different kettle of fish and a different theory that I have going on to do with that subject. However, these ancient ores were used to make Gwyn's army, and they were used to reward Go, who fought against the dragons. The dragonbone pauldrons are a symbol of the highest honour, although they not only represent honour, they represent the sacrifices that were made in defeating the dragons so the Age of Fire could flourish. It seems then, with rewards such as these, Gwyn was extremely thankful for Go and the part that he played against the dragons. It would appear then that Gwyn and Go had a rather close relationship, or just immense respect for each other. This relationship then carried on through the Age of Fire and neared towards its end. But it wasn't just Gwyn's praise that got him to where he was. Go was a renowned bowman. He was unmatched, and the only person who ever came close to him was a human named Faris. His hat reads, "Broad-brimmed hat, favoured by the archer hero Faris." Faris was an accomplished archer, and though he was human, he ranked alongside Hawkeye Go, one of the 4 knights of Lord Gwyn. His hat is universally popular among children. The archer found in the Forest of Darkroot is not Faris. That forest protector is a female. Faris is described as a male. There is a male corpse found in the Darkroot Basin, but that is a different story for a different day. Returning to the Go point, as mentioned earlier, he was rewarded for his efforts. However, them rewards, they did come at a very high price.
"The dragons shall never be forgotten. We knights fought valiantly, but for every one of them, we lost 70 of our own. Exhilaration, pride, hatred, rage. The dragons teased out our dearest emotions. Thou will understand one day. At thy twilight, old thoughts return in great waves of nostalgia.
At thy twilight, old thoughts return in great waves of nostalgia. Now, when he says that, what is he on about? Is he reflecting on the state of the world, or his current situation? Because the place we find him in is a tower, and he didn't get here all on his own. He's been imprisoned in this tower for a very long time. So he could be coming to terms with his inevitable end and reflecting on the past, all that he's done, all that he's achieved, and he is currently living in the twilight between life and his uncertain death.
Me? There's very little to be said. What good is a dog with no hairs to hunt? But I'm lucky to be alive, I suppose.
Lucky to be alive, I suppose. Very interesting dialogue said by Go there. Is he reflecting on himself or reflecting on his race? Giants are referred to as slaves within the official guidebook and the design works. So it would seem if giants resisted enslavement, then they may be killed, or once they outlived their usefulness, they are then killed. Like dogs, they are then put down. But as mentioned, due to Go's relationship with Gwyn, it seems the same couldn't be done to him. So due to the fact that he couldn't be put down and killed because he had some kind of protection over him, he was instead imprisoned. The crest key reads, "The grooves of the crest are enchanted, the door sealed with a powerful spell." Now, I personally believe that Go was imprisoned before the primeval man was awakened, that being Manus. However, he is aware of current events.
I suspect thou hast taken a gander at it, but the dark of the abyss, which swallowed poor Artorius, threatens to devour our entire land of Ulasil. It seems that this dire fate is unavoidable, but seduced by a dark serpent or no, they awoke that thing themselves and drove it mad. One's demise is always one's own making. If thine wish is to succeed poor Artorius and challenge the spread of the dark, then thou must face Manus.
I think someone, or some people, did visit him in his solitude. This point we'll touch upon later. Interesting that Go refers to Ulasil as our land, even after he's been imprisoned and after all that he's been through. He still counts himself as one of the people, however they don't see him as such, and personally I don't think they ever did. Go has been in the tower for some time due to the wood shavings that can be seen all around him and even on him, but who has been providing him with this wood? He cannot get him himself, so as I mentioned before, it seems someone is taking pity on him and is keeping him within the loop of current events of Ulasil. Chopped down trees and the piles of logs in the valley below I believe to be responsible of whoever is helping Go. They are helping him stave the boredom while keeping his hobby of whittling alive and well. The most interesting and important question for me is why has no one protested his imprisonment? Why is he still within that tower? Why has the tower been locked with a key, with a magic key, and that key has ultimately been lost? The I'm sorry carving reads, "Head carved of arch trees by Go in his imprisonment." Go imparts an emotion to each and every completed carving, which helps him achieve personal enlightenment. When a head is disturbed, it speaks reflecting the emotion conferred to it. This head says, "I'm sorry." Have another look. Isn't that an expression of atonement? The definition for atonement reads, "The action of making amends for a wrong or injury." In religious context, it means reparation or expiation for sin. How fascinating. What did Go do to land himself in this confinement? Did he commit a sin? Did he injure someone? That's to be debated. Although I don't really think it matters what he did, as the persecution against giants is as old as time. Whatever the case, that being said, who do we know who deals in sin? Who is a symbol of the moon? Gwyndolin. His statues can be found in Ulasil, although decapitated. Is this something of Gwyndolin's doing, as the I'm sorry carving? If you look closely to me, it appears to be a crescent moon with a rather sad face. Could he be apologising to the moon, the deity of the moon, the dark sun Gwyndolin? I believe this is possible, as Gwyndolin does have a huge presence within Ulasil, if you believe the decapitated statues to be of him. As we mentioned previously, the crest key is imbued with some kind of magic that keeps the door locked. I am unaware of any Ulasil sorceries which could inflict the door and the key in this way, but Gwyndolin, his robes are described as magic, and the key has had some magic in it. Now that is a complete reach there with just the word magic being involved, but you know, it could be a stretch. So I think Gwyndolin had some influence over this key and locking away Go. That being said, it seems a key is not needed to get necessarily in this tower. The tower could be climbed by the inhabitants of Ulasil, or perhaps they also have multiple keys which let them in and out. I think they approached Go at night when he was asleep and then packed his helmet with resin. To read the description of the helmet again, only the eye holes were packed with tree resin by those who dismissed Go as a brutish giant. You'd imagine if he was awake for this, he would remember this and would take off his helmet. This is one of the biggest flaws people have with Go, but you've got to remember, From Software does create its characters sometimes with huge flaws, and they very much play into these flaws. So if you try and come at it with a logical head and try and think, well, why didn't they do this, why didn't they do that, you've got to remember they are flawed characters, so they would never think to do these things. Like Go would never think to remove his helmet. He does believe he is generally blind, and as I said, a giant of that size, he must have been sleeping when they did this to him, because he would remember it, or you would like to think he would remember it, if he was awake for the event. But a fierce and skilled warrior such as Go, he does not need his sight, he can rely on his other senses. As seen, he shoots Calamite down with just his ears. He is a master bowman. This mastery of the bow led Hawkeye Go to train the Silver Knights, and I believe it's this that is probably the reason that Go's and Gwyn's relationship was so strong, because Go trained his knights, and without this training I personally believe the war with the dragons would not have been won. Go and his great dragon slayers were vital in this war. Go's great bow reads, "Great bow, used by Hawkeye Go of Lord Gwyn's 4 knights for dragon slaying. This bow is larger than even those used by the famed dragon slayers. Only their leader, Go, had the strength to handle it. Dragon slayer arrows. Giant dragon slaying hunting arrows resemble iron spears, used by Hawkeye Go and his dragon slayers. They puncture human flesh easily. Dragon slayer arrows can only be used with the dragon slayer great bow, and vice versa." On the topic of arrows, Go's hobby of whittling actually predates the Age of Fire, and can even go as far back as the war with the dragons. Go's great arrows read, "Great arrow, used by Hawkeye Go, one of Lord Gwyn's 4 knights, for dragon slaying, requires a great bow. Go personally crafted each stone tip and wraps the shaft tightly with tree bark." This proves that giants are skilled, and they are capable of being educated, and are not in fact anywhere near brutish as they are perceived to be. The giant blacksmith is in service to the gods since the blacksmith deity passed, but he was not taken when the gods left Anor Londo. Similar to how a dog is left when there's a house on fire, or when a new home cannot accommodate them, he was left behind, and he was knowingly abandoned. The giant blacksmith, although he is a master of his craft, he is still a slave. His attire is the same as the giants in Sens. The headpiece is less of a helmet and is more a mark of a slave. The bands go around the eyes and they seem to go around the mouth, preventing them from having an identity. The giants do have a face, but you wouldn't know. They are not seen as equals. The helmet, for me, it represents that. Now let's move on to the history of giants and where they came from. I believe that giants were the first race to emerge out of the dark. There are different races of giants, those more human looking such as the gods, and those such as Go and his kin. I believe Go and his kin were the first race to emerge from that dark and be attracted to the flame. On the topic of the gods are a race of giants. The Witch of Izalith towers over her daughters even after she shared her power with them. Gwyn towers over his Silver Knights, and Nito I believe to be a giant before his death. When the first flame appeared, you can imagine battles were fought over this power. When the first primeval lord found their soul, it was a race for power. Now, who was the first lord to find their soul? Was it Gwyn, as he arguably has the most powerful? Was it the Witch of Izalith? It may have even been Nito, but the fact is I do believe battles were fought over the flame. A common misconception is that while the flame first appeared, it was just straight into battle with the dragons. Well, this isn't strictly true. For Silver Knights to be a thing, for Gwyn to retain power, for the Witch of Izalith to have daughters in a sense, although I don't think they are directly her daughters, civilization must have flourished beneath the world, beneath the arch trees that the dragons inhabited. And then once civilization was at a strong enough point, they then went to war with the dragons. As we know, Gwyn has an uncle. Where you think that is his literal uncle or just in a sense is his uncle is to be debated. But I do think there was civilization lived underground for a long time, and battles were fought over the first flame. I don't think the souls were found right there and then as soon as it appeared. There are different things that emerge from the dark. The Tomb of the Giants is evidence of this. The dogs, as we call them, the skeletal beasts, you can see they have bony fangs, and there's very things in the Tomb of the Giants that almost look primordial. They look as if they were creatures from the beginnings of the earth. So many things came from the dark, although they didn't survive into the modern age or the age of fire, they still existed. And giants, Go and his kin, are a result of that. They are something that survived from since the very beginning of dark, and because of this they haven't advanced such as the other civilizations, the other types of giants and the humans that came along after them. So they've been persecuted and they've been treated like second-class citizens. Staying on the point of battle but returning to Nito, I believe that Nito died on a battlefield. My reasons for this are his appearance. He's a giant and on him seem to be lesser skeletons. He didn't obtain this form slowly by adding bodies to him, much like Godric in Elden Ring seems to be doing. No, it seems he rised from the ground, and with him came bodies of the dead that may have died on top of him in battle. A OG Souls creator that I've referenced a few times in my lore through series on Undead Pilgrimage and in the previous lore video about Gwendolyn is Crest. Now Crest also undressed, shall we say, Nito in his video, and you can see Nito is in fact a giant. He has a giant skeletal structure, and all these bits and bobs of other skeletons, well, they're just for not cosmetics, but they are not necessarily part of him. There is bigger bones beneath the bones of the lesser skeletons, if you catch my meaning. Anyway, point being to all this is, I believe Nito, the giant, was in war with the humans or lesser humanoids. Because when we talk about humans pre-Age of Fire, when the first flame appeared, well, depending on when the furtive pygmy was around and when he split his dark soul, we don't want to get too confused, because humanity and the dark soul's humanity, I believe, are two different things. Each human has humanity within them, yes, but the dark soul, who's named humanity, that is not necessarily humanity. So calling these smaller skeletons humans on Nito can and can't be correct. It depends on your perception of things, but just for simple sake, and because I find it difficult to talk sometimes anyway, I'm just going to refer them to humans if we talk about pre-Age of Fire, when the first flame appeared, and the smaller humanoids when compared to the giants. So just get that out there before we continue on. The skeletal remains of giants can be faced through numerous parts of the game, obviously in the Tomb of the Giants, in the Catacombs, and in Firelink Shrine's graveyard. These skeletons of giants and humans have been resurrected due to the presence of necromancers and Pinwheel's involvement with the Catacombs, but that's a different story for a different day. In the graveyard, you can see that there are huge tombstones dedicated to giants or people of giant stature. These gravestones, they are grand. These people respected. The giants were respected because, again, I believe these to be the race of giants similar to the gods, more human looking and not primitive looking like Go and his kin. They were respected, they were laid to rest, flowers were given on their graves, and also they were fierce warriors because we see them wielding scimitars. This is also another connection that I believe they are not the giants like Go and the slave giants, because they wield scimitars. Their fighting style is different to that of the giants we face in Sens, and if you even attack Go, I don't know why you do that. I've never attacked him because I love him too much, but yeah, Go and his almighty elbow drop is something to be reckoned with. However, he doesn't wield a scimitar is my point. Those of you who are more keener-eyed than the rest may know that there are hidden quotation mark gravestones in Firelink Graveyard. For years I ran past these without knowing they were there. For years I returned from the catacombs, I entered the catacombs and just thought they were boulders. Nothing less, nothing more, but it turns out they are actually gravestones. There are not very many of these gravestones and they face the edge of the cliff. I do think the graveyard has given way at some point in time, so there may have been more of them, but we shall never know. They appear to be extremely primitive, and if you have a look at the names, it seems they have actually been crossed out. They've been etched out of the stone, which is quite telling. Who would do this? Why would this be a thing? Why would someone go through the effort of removing the names of the dead on the gravestones? As mentioned before, giants are seen as brutish. It seems they are treated as second-class citizens, and they are for the most part not remembered because they are slaves. Who remembers the slaves? Nobody. So I believe this is what we might be seeing due to the primitive style and overall look of these things, and the fact that there's not very many of them and that they're facing the cliff. I think these may be of Go and his kin, the slave giants, and people have gone out their way and made effort to remove any name or any record of them, which if you think about that, it's really quite upsetting. But the more we talk about giants and the more you understand that they are slaves, it wouldn't be a far-fetched to believe that yes, people would do this to their gravestones if this is their gravestones. Again, this is all my own personal theory to make this fit in with the video. Let me know what you think. Now, when you think of slaves and you think of Lordran and you think of early civilization and the grand scale of the place of Lordran, whether it be the burg, the parish or Anor Londo, who do you think built these places? I believe it to be the slave giants. This is going off just the size of the bricks, the time in which these were constructed in, and again, we know that giants are highly skilled with Go's carvings of wood and the giant blacksmith's creations of legendary weapons. I'd wager it wouldn't be too far-fetched to imagine that the giants did build the structures we see throughout Lordran, because point in case is the bricks you can see in Anor Londo. They are absolutely huge, and with the intricate carvings and the actual architecture of the place, we know giants, they are good, they are highly skilled with their hands, so I think that could be an argument for the fact that they built the City of the Gods. Also with the lands below to do with the Burg, if you look at the Burg, well, the supporting pillars in Blighttown, they are huge. The stones are absolutely massive. Only giants could really construct this, and I believe that the time that it took to build this would have been far quicker than humans, because the DLC took place 300 years ago, and at the time of the main game, the parish and the burg, they're not new, they've been around for a while. So let's just say it took 100 years for the parish and burg to be completed. Now, who would have a better chance at doing that in that time? Well, an army of giants and their strength, not an army of people, because Ulasil had just fallen. I believe the Bergen parish was inhabited by the people who fled Ulasil, also mixed with the people who came to Lordran seeking a better life in the time of the undead curse. Because if we take a look at the undead merchant, one of his dialogues is how he used to get stones thrown at him back home. So he is a new inhabitant of Lordran. I think it was a mixture of people who fled Ulasil and a mixture of people who came to Lordran to live in the land of souls. Anyway, point being, giants 100% I believe built the places that we see, just because the time it would have taken is not possible with human hands and human strength. What I'm about to say is a theory of my own, and if you don't agree with me or possibly do agree with me, just let me know what you think of this theory. Anyway, I would love to hear from you guys. So in Anor Londo, what do we find? We find sentinels. Again, we talked about their armour, ancient brass and what they're made of, etc, etc. We've made the argument that maybe giants did build Anor Londo, so Anor Londo has been around for a very, very, very long time. Well, perhaps giants were also in service of the gods in Anor Londo, carrying out the same duties as we find the giant sentinels doing now. Perhaps the giants were replaced by the giant sentinels once a certain technology was discovered. Core of an Iron Golem reads, Soul serving as the core of the Iron Golem, guardian of Sen's fortress, and slayer of countless heroes seeking Anor Londo. Originally a bone of an everlasting dragon. Transmogrification, I hope I've said that right. If you're familiar with me, you know I can't say words. That's a big word, so I struggled there. Anyway, the definition for that word means to change in appearance or form. So the gods figured out this new technology. They changed an everlasting dragon bone and turned it into the Iron Golem's soul. Now, why would they just use this technology just for the Iron Golem? It seems if this new technology was discovered, well, then it would be used to its absolute maximum. And I think the Sentinels are a result of that. Lesser souls, yes, but they are just souls which inhabit a body and can be controlled at the will of the gods. They serve the gods, no questions asked. They will not rebel. They will not disobey. They do a very good job of that. And I think maybe in very early days of Anor Londo, they may have replaced the giants' duties, as the giants may have been the original protectors of Anor Londo. Possibly. That's completely off my top of my head, and that is my own little theory there. Whatever the case may be about my little theory, the more important question is where are all the giants? If I'm claiming that they did build Anor Londo and the structures below Anor Londo, why are there so few of them? To my knowledge, there's 3 in Sens that can be found, and there's obviously the giant blacksmith in Anor Londo. I think at some point in time the giants may have tried to revolt against their masters and were killed for it. Those who didn't go against the gods stayed in enslavement, and we find the rest of them still serving out in Sens. As we talked about, giants are already seen as second-class citizens, they are seen as brutish, they are seen as lesser, and are, of course, treated as slaves. So any excuse to rid of these so-called slaves in a world where there's no more need for them, we don't need them to build our cities, we don't need to do anything, we don't need them to fight the dragons, they've served their usefulness, now let's put these dogs down. And I think that may link into what Go says when he said he's lucky to be alive, because potentially he may have played a part in his kin trying to break free of their masters, he may have spoke up for their cause and may have spoke in proof of what they are doing, and by doing this he went against the gods, or more specifically Gwendolyn, depending on if you believe Gwendolyn was in control of the Dark Moon blades at this point. Anyway, he sinned and he was punished for that and trapped within this tower, and because of his relationships with Gwyn, he wasn't killed right there and then, he was just confined to solitude. Returning on the point as why no one tried to free him or has attempted to free him, well, as we mentioned, if this order to imprison him did come from a god, mainly Gwendolyn, then to go against those orders to attempt to free him would also land you as a sinner, and you'd either be imprisoned or killed. I think Go understands this, and this is why he doesn't speak ill of his fellow knights, mainly Artorias, when you slay him from the horrors of the abyss, and by doing this you obviously save his legend, as we know. Armour of the Dragon Slayer Ornstein, who guards the cathedral in the forsaken city of Anor Londo. Ornstein is believed to be the captain of the Four Knights. His golden lion helm is imbued with the power of lightning and should provide good protection against it. He is believed to be the captain of the Four Knights. Now, this is a common theory, and the common theory is that Go was the captain of the Four Knights. So depending on what you believe, what led him into the tower, whatever his actions were, I think once he landed himself in the tower before the fall of Ulasil, a new captain of the Knights was decided, and this decision may have been by Gwyn or Gwendolyn, because it all depends when you believe Gwyn left to link the flame. Was it just before the DLC, during the DLC, or just after the DLC? Because when Go gives you Lord Gwyn's blessing, it makes you believe that Lord Gwyn's blessing is still to be valued and it still contains power, like Lord Gwyn is still around. However, Go's perspective is not to be trusted. He has been in this tower for a long time. He has been in solitude for a long time, and if you believe he was put in this place before the events of the DLC, then this may also line up with when you believe Gwyn left, because if he did leave shortly before the events of the DLC, then that makes sense, because Gwyn would have had to give him the order for Artorias to go and check out and sort out the abyss that was going on down in Ulasil. And if he left shortly after that, then obviously Go wouldn't know this. He would still think Gwyn is still around to give his blessing and that his blessing still has value. And if Lord Gwyn was aware of Go's confinement, either by his son, the order of his son, or maybe Gwyn had some role in that, unfortunately because of the actions of Go, he could not disagree. He did sin against the gods, so he had to be punished, but maybe Gwyn had some involvement for him not to be killed and to be locked up instead. Again, pure speculation, but someone obviously decided that Ornstein is to take over, and if Gwyn was still around just before the events of the DLC, Ornstein's role is very important. He's then going to look after the princess, because Guinevere, I believe, was still around. Even after Gwyn left, she stayed for a while, but then she did eventually leave with Flame God Flan. So someone promoted Ornstein to captain of the Four Knights. Someone who understood the importance of Ornstein's future role to be the protector of Anor Londo and protect his children, his Guinevere, his daughter, I think would be Lord Gwyn. So I think he made that decision to promote Ornstein with the situation that was going on. Obviously Artorias was busy dealing with Ulasil, unsure where Kieran was during this time of transition between power of Lord Gwyn to his son and the power of Anor Londo, but we do find her near Artorias' grave when we slay him in the DLC, so she may have gone against orders and gone down to Ulasil, or she may have been ordered to go down to Ulasil, we'll never know that. But Go was confined and locked up, had been for some time. Ornstein was the only one in the capital, and also his orders may have been to look after Smo and keep him in check, because Gwyn is the one who stopped Smo from being knighted and joining the Four Knights, because Gwyn's Four Knights isn't a finite number. Anyone can be added to the ranks. It could have been the 5 Knights, it could have been the 6 Knights, but only 4 were worthy enough to be called that. So that's also a common misconception. Gwyn's 4 Knights is not be all and end all. One doesn't have to die to be replaced. It can be any number at any time, but it was only ever 4. It could have been 5, but as I said, Smo grinding up the bones of his victims and sprinkling it onto his food, that's what destroyed his chances of joining the Knights. So, that about does it, guys. I'm all out of Pringles, I'm all out of Coke. That's a reference to E&B again. I always throw them in when I have the chance. If you liked this video, please drop a like, and if you're new here, please consider subscribing. It's massively appreciated. Also, please check out my other content, whether it's my lore through or the lore video prior to this. I also have another lore video, which is a part of a series I'm doing. The next episode will be out soonish. That's going to be a collab with a fellow lore enthusiast, Ghostly French Toast, so look forward to that. The next lore video won't strictly be on lore, but it'll be about someone who basically made me fall in love with the lore and the game as a whole. If you already watch me and you know who I always ramble about, well, I've made it pretty obvious, so that's going to be about them in a positive light, and it's really just a thank you to them. So yeah, these lore videos, they take a lot. I've been editing this video for, I'm not joking, about 18 hours in total now, because I could just make it a bunch of pictures with me talking in the background, but I like to include examples as much as I can, as well as the community art. So I put a lot of effort into these, so hopefully you guys can see that. Again, I'm loving that I've got like a small community, a sense of community now, should I say. I love communicating with you guys, so thank you all for the support. It's really, really great, and we finally got a small corner of the internet, I suppose. So yeah, that's about it, guys. So thank you very much for watching, as always, and I shall see you in the next one.
But even so, one day the flames will fade, and only dark will remain, and even a legend such as thyself can do nothing to stop that.